2004 and 2005, we undertook what was, for me, the most interesting and exciting project I've ever been involved in. The restoration, if you will, it's not really that in technical terms. In the preservation world, you'd call it a rehabilitation of the Sunken Road here. If you were standing here in 2001, you would be standing in the middle of the road and would get run over. There would have been a fence along the side. There was one way going this way. There was a fence along the side. If you were standing here in 1990, there was no fence at all. Just two-way traffic going up and down the road. I included in your packet some images of the road later on and some maps. But what you see today is the product of a number of events coming together. First, in the 1930s, the city conveyed title of the Sunken Road to the Park Service. The Park Service owned it. The city retained rights to access to it. So traffic continued. It's a very unusual arrangement. The Park Service doesn't usually do that sort of thing. But in any event, we owned this road. The city had the right to access it. In 1991, the Park Service requested that the road be closed. But those of you who lived here a long time, the city said no at the time. But it was in the park's planning documents that hopefully someday this would be closed and open so that you could walk it as you are tonight. But about 1991, anyone know what else was percolating in Fredericksburg at that time? If you've been here for a long time? Central Park, but what about, there's a new road, the Blue Gray Parkway. We would not be here tonight, standing here, we'd be standing there maybe, if not for the Blue Gray Parkway. Because if you were coming into town and wanted to get over to Lafayette Boulevard before the Blue Gray Parkway, you came into town and you came down the Sunken Road. After the Blue Gray Parkway, you didn't have to do that anymore. And the traffic onto the Sunken Road sunk by 80% in a matter of 2 or 3 years. That opened the door for us to go in and make the formal request that the city allow the road to be closed, which involved them donating to the Park Service vehicular access rights to the road. And they did in 2001. And then we began the process, okay, well, what do we do now? So we had a road that had for a long time just been a typical city street. The walls were gone, most of them by 1867. Totally gone. The only original part of the wall is the one down in front of Brompton. And that's probably sloughed over so many times that, you know, it's like, you know, George Washington's hatchet. The head's been replaced 5 times and the handle 4 times, but it's his hatchet. But we undertook this effort, and as I said, it was a fascinating exercise. First off, we needed to understand the road. We didn't know how sunken it was. In fact, its sunken status is not from its extensive use. It's from having to cut it out of the foreslope of this ridge. Now down there, it's a little bit more sunken than it is elsewhere, but that's not really from use. That is from the design of the road originally. So we didn't know how sunken it was, really. So we had to find that out, which meant archaeology. Because we did not want to, one of our goals, we set a criteria right off, we wanted to work above the historic resource. We did not want to dig out the road the historic road in order to restore it. That's not exactly restoring anything. The second question was about the stone walls. They were gone, completely gone. We had a sense of where they were, but we didn't know whether the footers were there, and if they were there, what did they consist of? I've included in your packets a photograph of some of the archaeology we did on the stone wall. We found, in fact, all of the footers still there, clear as a bell. When we did the road, we were not so fortunate. We did 2 trenches across the road, and in both of them, we could not find the historic road surface, which means in the course of paving and repaving all those years, it's very likely that the original surface of the road is no longer there. But we did only test in 2 areas, so we decided we're still not going there. So we determined, as best we could with an estimate, to work 6 to 8 inches above what we believe to be the historic surface of the road. And so those 2 elements were the most important part of the project. Did we find much along the way? Not really. We found a couple of bullets here and there, and the footers to the wall. we found an artillery fuse down by the Ennis house. Down at the north end of the road, we found a cannonball with a big plug of concrete in it. And we found it in an area that had been filled in the 1930s. So we were like, what's that? And then we realized in that area of fill was also a number of headstones discarded from the National Cemetery. And we concluded that the cannonball with its cement and the fuse hole was probably part of one of the cannonball displays up in the cemetery at one point. So we managed to not, as far as we know, do damage to the resource. We had to locate the houses, the Stevens house here. In fact, in the yard, we found a large concentration of toys, including the parts of a porcelain doll, which is perfectly fitting for Martha Stevens. It's about this big, and it has a garter belt. So I don't know what to make of that, but and it seemed to be about the period, according to the archaeologists. But the most dramatic part, two parts of the story were most dramatic. One was the road surface. We tried, I believe, 28 different road surfaces to come up with what would be durable, would not flood, don't get washed away. And we did all sorts. We had a whole, if you wanted to see every road surface in America, we had it up there that wasn't asphalt. And we hated them all. And after 28 tries, we finally settled on what you see here, dirt and stone. It's a very calculated mixture of dirt and stone, but it has held up tremendously. It needs to get its annual haircut of the grass being killed in it, but it has held up tremendously over time. The Sunken Road historically was not nearly as neat as it is today. We keep it neater now than we did 10 years ago, which I kind of regret, because it was always kind of a messy place, as your photographs will show. But then the other aspect of the project that was so interesting were the walls. So I was the project manager at the park level for this, and we spent lots of money with landscape architects, most of whom did a great job. But the guy doing the stone wall came back with a design. We said, great, thank you very much. We're going to build this thing. And then we went out and contracted with a group called the Dry Stone Conservancy, which is a nonprofit out of Kentucky, who had as its lead stonemason a guy named Neil Rippengale, Scottish. So if you envision a Scottish stonemason, this guy, if you're going to make a poster, this guy was it. Beautiful voice, accent, hands as big as melons and just as strong as could be. And he came out and we showed him, so that we hired him. He came out, we showed him the designs, and he looked at it and he said, so, you know, this wall might stand for 3 years, 5 years before someone, and he said, why don't we build a wall that'll be here for 3,000? And so literally in 15 minutes, he undid $30,000 worth of design on the back of a piece of paper and said, this is how we're going to build the wall. And this group, it was this is one of the most beautiful pieces of art in Fredericksburg, if you look at it that way. They committed to 30 days. They had over 400 feet of wall to build from the CCC wall down to here, and then down past the Ennis house there. And they went to the photographs. We had photographs that had pretty good images of the wall, and we could see that this wall was built either at a different time or by a different stonemason than this wall. Stones here are bigger, they're more nicely cut. That wall isn't. So I said, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. And they started on this wall. Now, if you look at this, this is the first section that they built in September of 2004. They started right here. This was the test panel, from here to right here. And you can see the stones are pretty small. And we looked at it and we said, that's not it. If you look at the photographs, if you get a chance, look at that photograph over there on that exhibit. It shows perfectly the wall. That's what we're working on. And they said, okay. I pointed to that and I said, do that. And so if you look closely from here down, it's a different wall. It's a different rhythm. The stones are bigger, they're cut a little bit more finely, and they look exactly like they do in that photograph. And if you look at the photographs that we have, I don't think they're in their packet, of this section of wall, it's rougher, it's smaller, but if you look at this one today, you can see that they captured that as well. They were done 2 days early, on budget, It was one of the most remarkable things. The stone guy who delivered the stone from a quarry in Reading, Pennsylvania, came down here once a week for 5 weeks. And he would dump a big pile of stones, tons of stones in the middle of the road. And of course these guys would go and they'd be gone in 3 or 4 days. But the stone guy came and he said, this is the greatest job I've ever had. I cannot wait to bring my daughter to see this place that I helped create with my stone. When they were done here, there was not even a sliver of stone left over out here. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful work of art. We had all sorts of problems. We ran into things we didn't expect. We had a surveyor who kind of surveyed a little bit wrong. We had to move paths and all of that. But in the end, it's a remarkable place. But it is not a restoration in the classic sense. Our goal was to create a place where people like me and Hillary and our staff, or just you with your mind's eye and a photograph and some words, can come and understand what happened. And I will close by saying, understanding what happened here begs the question, in my mind all the time, begs a certain amazement at what these men did, what they risked, what was at stake, what were they thinking when they did it. And you can't help but ask the question, why? And I would just suggest to you, as you walk a place like this, vivid as it is, that our greatest hope is that as you walk a place like this, that you find that answer for yourself. Because I think the answer to that question of why they did it is incredibly important to the health of our nation.